got a bonus today. We're having two readings. And the first reading is from Isaiah. This is an amazing prophecy about what has been and what will be. Isaiah chapter 9, beginning at verse 4. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulder, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The context for this prophecy and for that opening line about the defeat of Midian is going back to Gideon, who leads the armies of Israel to defeat Midian. And Israel had been under the yoke of Midian, the oppression of Midian, for several generations. So this was an amazing act in the life of Israel. And it was described as a yoke, something that weighed down, imprisoned, subjugated, enslaved. And I bet you don't know this neat little fact, but that yoke is mentioned 48 times in the Old Testament. So it's a significant theme. Now, I only have that little gem by virtue of technology. But it's interesting that it's so important within the Old Testament. Yoke, slavery, subjection. Of course, the opening one of those is when the slaves in Egypt were released. But we have a God who releases. It's in his nature. And the word salvation, as I often repeat, in the Hebrew means to be released into spacious places. And whatever our moment in life, there will be things that we need to be released from. And the nature of our God is to release us into spacious places. And so this is a repeated theme that we get through Scripture. God is the one who removes the yoke. And the promise gets better and better because this passage of prophecy that starts with looking back to Midian goes on to looking to the ultimate release in Jesus. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. That sense of all the weight of trying to make things work is not ours, but rests on the shoulders of Jesus. So that's the sense that we have of yoke that comes right the way through the Old Testament. But then let's move into the New Testament and look at the verse for the week, which comes from Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 through to 30. Come to me, says Jesus, all of you who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And Jesus is using that picture of yoke in a slightly different way here. Rather than the oppression that all rests on us, he's pointing to the sort of yoke where the burden is shared, where two horses or two oxen, as would have been in the lands around Jesus, where two of them were yoked together by this big lump of wood that rested over their shoulders. And it's a hugely symbolic thing, this, because that yoke means that you share the load. But it gets better and better, because historically what they would do is to put a young animal with an older animal. And the older animal, sometimes the yoke was even skewed slightly, so that the older animal most definitely led. And not only did the older animal give the sense of direction, but here's one for all of us in our busy, busy world, also set the speed. So the picture is being yoked with Jesus. Interesting fact number 2. A one animal yoke meant that the animal could pull about its own body weight. Put two animals in the yoke together, and depending on their teamwork, that's significant with Jesus, depending on teamwork, they could pull between 3 and 10 times their combined body weight. This is a rich bit of imagery that Jesus is using. And really go, hey, some of you are painting today. Why not do some paintings of yokes? And the significance of being yoked to Jesus. Jesus leading. And here's the thing. Each one of us carries burdens. Things that we're yoked to. Burdens that weigh us down. We looked a bit at that the other day. But also those things that influence our direction of travel. That's significant within our world. There are so many things that actually influence the direction we're going. Or maybe they influence the speed at which we're going, and when and if we ever take a rest. So I'm always amused by groups of ministers gathering together, because they're a competitive lot, and when you try and organise another meeting, they're all saying, oh no, I can't do that, no, I'm busy that day, oh no, I've got a full day that day, sorry. And it's that sense of not just working hard for the Lord, but needing to be known to be working hard for the Lord. And we all have people around us, our peer group, who influence and burden us. And sometimes we're more yoked to public opinion than ever we are to Jesus. There's all sorts of areas where gospel truth and the society we live in clash, and we don't even notice. We're so used to going that way. So my heart cry for each of us is that our eyes are opened to the Jesus way and the Jesus yoke. Now, I could hurry on at that point, but I think it's really important that we just have a pause for you to just digest and think, how does that apply to me? Not in this general sense, but today, what's influencing me and tugging me this way or that way? What does it mean to be yoked to Jesus? Jesus says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We're to carry just his burden. That will include the whole of our life, but just his burden. And that's a learning process. Just like those two oxen who are yoked closely together, the younger one is there to learn direction and pace, and when to stop and rest. Moving with Jesus is a lifelong learning process, and we've got an awful lot of learning to do, haven't we? To go where you don't know and never be the same. You see, when we take those adventures with Jesus, where he is the lead, then all sorts of things can happen. For example, from Scripture, we think of in the Acts of the Apostles, where Peter, who was a good Jewish boy, went up on the roof to have a bit of a rest and had a vision that spoke to him of Jesus' new directions. The result of that is that we have become Christians and have heard good news, because the whole of that vision was breaking down barriers within Peter to the point that he would go to a Gentile house and tell good news about Jesus, the one that we could be yoked to, and find a new way of moving. Now, it can be scary, and Jesus can lead us into some scary places. But when we're yoked to him, it's also a safe, scary place. And very often, in the same way that the two oxen move together one step at a time, we only see the next step of the journey, and the rest is complete mud. Haven't got a clue. So it's walking with Jesus, that next step, and then he will reveal the step after that and the one after that. So here's the adventure. Hey, some people say following Jesus is boring. Hey, no, it's wonderful, it's scary, it's an adventure, but it's surrounded by a loving God that will not let us go. Take the yoke of Christ.